Hey, welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. It's been a while, but this is my Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Today, we're going to be doing a Q&A. Thank you so much for being here. Again, I'm going to let some people get live, but if you're catching me on replay, hit me up in the comments with hashtag replay. That'd be amazing. If you're joining me live, I'm excited that you're here. It's been, my last live was October 6th, almost 2 months ago. I'm going to dive into the whys and wherefores, but ultimately, if you're joining me live, that's amazing. Hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from. We'll do some here. So here's the agenda. We're going to do some shout outs. And then we're going to do, then we're going to do some shout outs. Then we're going to jump into the live Q&A. Hold your questions until I say go, because again, let me just remove this here. Hold on. I'm getting this error message from StreamYard. Anyway, sorry about that. So welcome. Listen, hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in. We'll do some shout outs. Then we're going to jump into live Q&A. Hold your questions. Give it a minute or two for people to get live. We've got Mega Axle Pilot Car from Tampa Bay, Florida. We got Becky Younger from Joplin, Missouri. We got Damon Charlotte from Ventura, California. We've got Leo 774. We got Leo from Paris, France. Wow, amazing. That's awesome. Matter of fact, you know what? I'm going to put some of these up on the screen here so you guys can see them. So we got people joining us from all over. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. I apologize for this being so delayed. Let me explain to you what's happened up to this point. Oh, geez. Let's do some more shout outs before that. We got Tea Time from Minneapolis, Minnesota. We got H-Leb from Gleb, Chicago. We got Gleb from Chicago. We got Mike from Orlando. Yeah, we got people coming from all over. I'm excited that you guys are here. Thank you so much. I know I've had some time off here. We got Eric from Janesville, Wisconsin. Janesville, I think. Yeah, perfect. Man, we got people coming in from all. I'm excited that you guys are here. Here's why. Because it's been 2 months, almost 2 months since I've done a live. And I'll be honest with you guys. I kind of enjoyed the break. I've been doing these lives for many, many, many years. And the formats have kind of changed a little bit over the years, but I really enjoy these live Q&As. Sometimes we talk about freight broker startup. Sometimes we talk about freight broker sales. Sometimes we talk about scaling or marketing. Sometimes we talk about compliance. Sometimes we talk about some industry things that are going on. It really depends. But ultimately, you know, I've always gotten a great response from everybody, you know, in these lives. So thank you for being here. I'm looking for some of my, some of the people that are my steadies that haven't really showed back up yet. Humphrey from Dallas, thank you for being here. But listen, here's the format. Here's how it's going to go. We're going to do these quick shout outs. Then we're going to jump into live Q&A. That means if you have questions about, again, freight broker startup, freight broker sales, how to get clients, setting up your authority, setting up your home office, sourcing carriers, doing rating, scaling, marketing, anything, I will do my absolute best to try to answer those questions. I'll be very upfront with you. I don't have all the answers, meaning I don't know everything. But, you know, I've been an entrepreneur for over 30 years. I built 4 multi-million-dollar companies in 4 different industries. So I have some experience. I built my brokerage, started in 2003, sold it in 2016, grew that to over $80 million a year in revenue. So I do have a lot of hands-on experience. I've trained over 10,000 students in my Freight Broker Bootcamp online training program, well known to be the most cost-effective and comprehensive online training program. So if you guys want to check that out, feel free. You can go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com. Again, that's completely up to you. If you're looking for startup help, if you're looking for help becoming a freight broker or becoming a freight agent, that's the best place to go. Okay. So who else we got here? We got Corey Buchan from Billings, Montana. Awesome. One of the regulars who's back with us. Thank God. All right, guys. So listen, let's, without further ado, let's jump into the Q&A. If you guys have questions, hit me up in the comments. I will do my absolute best again to try to answer those questions. So now the ball is in your court, and I hope that you guys have some good questions. Again, I haven't been here for a couple of months doing these lives. And as you guys are doing these questions, I will, I'll fill you in as to what's going on, why I was off. So I'm a big bow hunting guy, whitetails. So in October and November, I usually take a little bit of time off, but this year I took a lot of time off. Spent a lot of time in the woods, spent a lot of time at my camp, spent a lot of time down there. Have really enjoyed it. Was just about to come back maybe like 3 weeks ago and 3 or 4 weeks, about 3 weeks ago, I guess, and jump back into these lives. And all of a sudden I got hit with a really bad head, sinus, cold. You can still hear I'm not 100% over it. I'm probably 98%, but lost my voice pretty much completely, and took me the better part of 2+ weeks to really get back to baseline. So that was a couple of things that are going on. Some of you also may know that, my wife and I, our family, we got a new puppy in September. And so he's been very needy, been spending a lot of time with him as well. His name is George. He's a purebred Great Dane. So he's growing like crazy. He's 4.5 months old. He weighs 60+ pounds. So he's really, really pretty amazing. So that's kind of what's been going on with me. I'll give you, so that's my update. So now let's jump into the Q&A and see if I can help any of you guys with what's going on in your world. Leo asks, how to deal with customers that ghost you after your offer, or advice to not get ghosted in the first place. Okay, Leo. So getting ghosted is just a part of sales, right? So number one, you have to understand you're not necessarily doing anything wrong. It happens. So the challenge is, let's kind of address the upfront, how to try to prevent getting ghosted. Here's what most freight brokers and freight agents do. So what they do is they're on the phone with a client, or they're communicating via email with the client, and the client asks for a quote for a lane, let's call it Buffalo to Atlanta flatbed. Okay. Hopefully you're on the phone talking to them. And this is not necessarily a client. This is a prospect. Okay. Clients typically don't ghost you. If someone's already doing business with you, they typically don't ghost you. But a prospect who you haven't done business with, it's not uncommon for them to ghost you. So you're on the call with them. Let's assume it's a call, and they ask you for that quote from Buffalo to Atlanta for flatbeds, whatever the lane may be. And you say, great. All right, let me work on that quote. I'll send it over to you in 5 minutes. They're like, okay, great. So you get off the phone, you do the quote, you send them an email. And after you send that email, you don't get any response. Now, the number one reason why, is that you did not control the conversation. You did not set the expectations, and you did not schedule a defined follow-up. So at the end of that call, after they asked you for the quote, you said, great, I'll get that to you. First of all, do you need that in 5 minutes, or is that something I could get to you later today? You want to know what their expectations are. If they say I need it in 5 minutes, great, get it done in 5 minutes. If they say I need it by the end of the day or tomorrow morning, great. Then that gives you a little bit of extra time to do research and make sure your pricing is tight and correct, right? But before you get off the phone, the number one way you can prevent being ghosted is very simple. It's to schedule the next follow-up. So before you get off that phone call, say, listen, I'm going to do this rate. I'm going to send it over to you tomorrow morning. How about I give you the morning to look at it? I'd love to jump back on the phone with you really quick to have a quick chat in the afternoon. Could we talk at maybe 1 or 2 or 3? What's better for you? So scheduling that follow-up, what you need to learn to do is you need to learn to go from call to call to call to call. If you don't schedule those actions, then what's going to happen is you're going to have these big gaps. You're going to have a conversation with them on Monday, and then you're going to be calling them and emailing them all week. And maybe you haven't, by Friday, you still haven't talked to them, right? So the problem is they get busy. And if you don't schedule the next activity, then what happens is you're leaving it way too open. That's the primary reason why you're getting ghosted. Okay. Is because you're not scheduling that next action. So that's the number one thing you can do to prevent that. Now, if they've ghosted you, then, at this point, continuing to email them back and forth probably isn't going to, to make it happen, right? So what you need to do is you need to follow up them via the phone, and you need to try to get them back on the phone. You need to refocus in on the pain point and the urgency that they had, or that you had the conversation about, where you were going to be able to help them with whatever that pain point was, right? So however you were able to hook them on the front end, whatever your compelling sales hook that got them to listen to you and to allow you to quote, you need to refocus in back on that. Other than that, there is no magic bullet for preventing people from ghosting you, other than, once they start ghosting you, the best part is to prevent it up front by going from one call to the next call. Because here, I'm a big believer in momentum. Okay. You should take your sales call. Here's your first call. Here's your next call. Here's your next call. Here's your next call. And that's where the sale happens. But if you do, here's your call, and then you don't talk to them for 2 weeks, by the time you talk to them, your momentum's way down here. And then when you do get back on the phone, you got to spend all that time bringing it back up to here. And then and then you get off the phone with them and you don't talk to them for another 2 weeks, then your momentum goes back down to here. And so you get my point. My point is you need to be able to try to condense the time frame in which you're having these conversations. You'd rather have 5 communications with your prospect in a 10-day period of time rather than a 5 communications with that prospect over a 3-month period of time. There's more momentum and more likelihood that you'll be able to get the client and close the sale if you condense those communications and contacts. So I hope that helps. If you got a follow-up, let me know. Let me jump to another question for now. Question, how to reach shippers? Well, there's 4 primary ways that I'm a big fan of reaching out to shippers. Number 1 is the phone, right? The phone gives you incredible leverage, but people avoid cold calling because they're afraid of rejection, okay? Number 2 is cold emailing. That means sending an email to somebody that you don't know in an effort to try to get their attention and start a dialogue. Number 3 is LinkedIn. Using LinkedIn as a social selling platform, trying to slow the process down, connecting with them, starting a dialogue through maybe Messenger, and then converting that into a phone call. And then number 4 is face-to-face, okay? If you have local prospects in your local geography, maybe within 50 miles, whether that be industrial parks or manufacturing areas within your community, you can go out there and knock on doors, and you can go door to door and try to make some connections, start a dialogue, and start, focusing in on that local market. Those are the 4 primary ways that I'm a big believer in. And I'm a big believer in doing what I call a multi-channel outreach, meaning you're not just doing the phone, you're not just doing email, you're not just doing LinkedIn, you're doing all of those things. So for example, a sales cadence that you might do is, you have a brand new prospect you're calling, it's Monday, maybe you're going to call them in the AM, and then in the PM, send them a LinkedIn connection request on Monday. And then on Tuesday, you're going to call them again. And then in the afternoon, you're going to email them. And then on Thursday, you're going to call them again. And then you're going to leave a voicemail. And then on Friday, if they're local, maybe you're going to drop into their physical location because you've called them multiple times, and now you have something a little bit to talk about and create some urgency. So using a multi-channel outreach approach of email, LinkedIn, face-to-face, and the phone will increase your contacts. Meaning if you just use one channel, you're going to get X amount of contacts. If you use multiple channels, you might get 2 or 3X contacts. Okay. And this is, again, a contact sport. So we've got to have these conversations. All right. So I hope that helps. Question, is it possible to become a freight broker agent if you have sales experience and truck driver experience? Absolutely, 100%. Truck drivers have some of the absolute best experience for becoming either a freight broker or a freight agent. Let me explain why. There's nobody that knows better what it takes to pick up a load and deliver a load on time in good condition with no problems. Truck drivers know it the best. They sit in the seat, they're on the docks, they load the freight, they unload the freight. They know the nuances of, what you have to do on a flatbed load and what you have to do on a refrigerated load and what you have to do on an oversized load and what you have to do on an expedited load, right? So they've been there, they've done that. Their hands-on experience is extremely valuable. So I'm a huge fan of people that are truck drivers that pivot over and convert into becoming either an agent or a broker. Now, the other part you said is if you have sales experience. Sales is the number one challenge for most new brokers and most new agents, because the biggest challenge is they're afraid to sell, their fear of failure, their fear of rejection. So their mindset is one of the biggest challenges just to get over that. And once you get over that, now you've got to have the strategies, right? You got to have the tactics, you got to have the tools in order to start a dialogue, right? Use a compelling sales hook, start a dialogue, build rapport, ask some questions, qualify your prospect, right? So that's part of that sales process, but that doesn't come intuitively. You can't just jump on the phone and try to ad lib and have any sort of predictable results, right? So that's why I put together my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. Let me just share that with you guys really quick. My Freight Broker Sales Accelerator is a mentoring and coaching program where I take that piece of my brain, I transplant it into your head, and I teach you everything I know about freight broker sales strategy, tactics, tools, everything that I use to do over $200 million as a freight broker. I've had this program for several years now. I've put over 1,000 clients through this program. We've had amazing success stories. The exit survey is a 9.2 out of 10, okay, which is crazy. I would have been happy with a 7, ecstatic with an 8. On average, it's a 9.2 out of 10 when I ask students to complete a survey after they've completed the program. So if you want to get on the wait list for that, it's not open for enrollment right now. But if you want to get on the wait list, you can still hear my voice, a little hoarse. Go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. You'll get notified either by email or text. And I will be opening up the Sales Accelerator sometime during Q1. I'm not sure the exact date. January, February, March. It's kind of loose right now. But if you're not on the wait list, you have no chance to be a part of the program. Okay, so get on the wait list. All right, cool. Hope that helps. Let me hit the next question here. Holy cow, you got a lot of questions. Give me a second. Comments, sorry. Scrolling, hold on a minute. Okay, Becky Younger, can you use your surety bond to quick pay carriers? No. Your surety bond is a requirement. It's more like an insurance policy that guarantees payment to the carrier in the event that you as the broker do not pay them, okay? So think of it more as an insurance policy that insures the carriers you're doing business with up to $75,000 that you will pay them in the event that they'll get paid in the event that you don't pay them for whatever reason. Say you go out of business, file bankruptcy, the first $75,000 worth of invoices that are submitted to the surety bond company have to be covered, okay? So that's what a surety bond is. You can't use that to quick pay. You'll have to have, if you're going to quick pay, you're going to have to either do an ACH, or you're going to have to use a factoring company, or you're going to have to use some form of payment transfer in order to get that money to them. But yeah, no, you cannot use a surety bond for quick pays. Best way to solicit clients. There is no best. It really comes down to preference. I already explained to you that I'm a big believer in a multi-touch point outreach strategy. That's what I teach in my Sales Accelerator program. It's what I did. It's what I've used. It's what my clients have used. And that is using a combination of phone, email, LinkedIn, and face-to-face. If you use those combination of those 4 things, you will start having a dialogue. The biggest problem isn't the mode of which you're reaching out to them. It's what you're saying and how you differentiate yourself from the crowd when you do get them on the phone. How to be different, how to create a compelling sales hook, how to build rapport, how to ask the right questions, how to qualify your prospect, how to find a need, right? Right. So those are all some of the things that you need to understand. And again, those aren't intuitive to most people. Even people who have sales training, the sales training typically isn't very good, right? So that was what I would say would be the best way, is having a multi-touch point outreach strategy. Hope that helps. Question: overcoming the feeling that the company is not wanting to help you when you have been with them for a month as a freight agent and cannot get any customers. You're not alone here, Eric. It really depends upon the company that you've partnered with, right? It depends upon, the resources they have, the model they have, the experience they have. For example, if you partnered with a broker who just got their authority and they don't even have their own clients and they're really struggling to generate any sort of cash flow, they may or may not be willing to help you because, again, they can't control what you do. They can only control what they do, or let's say they're a really big brokerage, they've got 100 or 200 agents and you're just another number, right? That could also be a cause, right? So, I think that ultimately what you have to do when choosing a broker is you really have to truly vet them. And you really need to focus in on it like it's a partnership. And you need to vet them as much as they're vetting you. And you also have to not be afraid that if you made a mistake and you're with the wrong company, that you find another company to work with. And, ultimately that would be, one of the things you may have to do. Now, you also have to take some ownership. It's not their job to build your business. That's not their job. Their job is to help support you along the way, particularly when it comes to technology and load boards, carrier databases, supporting from a billing perspective, from a payment perspective to carriers. That's their primary function. Their job is not to train you on sales. That's not their job. Okay. Their job is not to get you shippers. Their job is not to close sales for you. That's your job. If you weren't doing that on your own, then you wouldn't get 50, 60, 70% commission, which is what most agents get. Right. So, there's two sides to that coin. One, I want you to look in the mirror and see what type of support you're really looking for. And two, make sure that they're, vet the company in such a way that you put yourself in a good spot. Hope that helps. Is it worth to go trucking conventions to network? I guess it depends, but I never did. The conventions that I would go to and the trade shows that I would go to are where I was able to go to a place that had a target-rich opportunity to speak with my niche market. So, for example, if I'm in the refrigerated freight, okay, and they have a trade show about ice cream, okay, that's probably a good place for me to go. If everybody there is in and around ice cream and refrigerated food and things of that nature, and I specialize in refrigerated transport, that's where I would go. If it was flatbed, then I would go to things like trade shows for building supplies or steel or oil and gas, things of that nature. My goal was to be able to have a conversation and to start a dialogue with people that were in my niche, prospects that were in my niche, my client niche, my ICP, my ideal customer profile. So I'm not a big fan of just going to, industry events for the sake of industry events and for networking, right? You can do a lot of virtual networking if you really want to do that. But if you're going to try to have a conversation and build a relationship with potential clients, then I think it could be worth your while. Freight Hustler, welcome from Virginia. Welcome. Eric, I'm wondering if it's obvious who I am a freight agent for. No, I don't really know. I'm not sure who you're an agent for. And I don't need to know, but that's completely up to you. Okay. Hello, all. Happy Blessed Monday. My question is it correct that the new collateral dollar amount requirement is $75,000 in order to open the insurance for freight brokerage business? Okay. I think we might be a little bit confused. Let me clarify. And it's been this way for a decade, okay, plus. So if you want to become a licensed freight broker, you need a $75,000 surety bond or, okay, broker trust. Let's focus in on the surety bond because the broker trusts are probably going to go away. So a $75,000 surety bond doesn't mean you need $75,000 in cash. The surety bond price is determined by your personal credit predominantly. So if you have a 700 plus credit score, you're going to get a really, inexpensive surety bond, maybe $1,000 to $2,000. If your credit is below that, then your cost is probably going to go up a little bit. If you have bad credit, you might not get approved at all, or your bond could be $6,000, $8,000, $10,000, right? So because it's a higher risk. So a surety bond is required to become a licensed freight broker. And the amount of that surety bond is $75,000, but you don't need $75,000 in cash. Okay. So with that in mind, if you can't get your surety bond and become your own licensed broker, don't worry about it. Relax. Start out as a freight agent. I know freight agents, personal friends of mine who have been in the industry for, let's call it 5 years, 6 years, who make over $1 million a year in commissions as a freight agent, and they came into the industry with no experience. Now, I'm not telling you that that's going to happen for you, and I'm not guaranteeing you anything. Matter of fact, if you do it, you might fail. But here's the reality. If you want to become a freight agent, you will work under a licensed freight broker, and you'll typically get paid between 50 and 70% of the profit on any load that you originate. So if you make a profit of, a shipper pays you $1,000, you pay a carrier $800, there's $200 in margin. You, the agent, would get somewhere between $100 and $140 in commission on that one load. Now, you can see how that scales up. If you do 1 load a day, you start doing 2 loads a day, 5 loads a day, so on and so forth. It scales up pretty quick, right? The good thing about being an agent is you don't have to have a surety bond. You don't have to have your freight broker authority. You don't have to do billing. You don't have to do collections. That's what the broker does, right? You don't have to worry about technology. You don't have to worry about cash flow. You don't have to worry about any of that because that's the broker's responsibility. And that's why they're keeping the other part anywhere between 30 and 50% for themselves. And it's a partnership. So start as an agent. You can get started as an agent for hundreds of dollars, maybe, a little bit of training, the cost of a couple of load boards, maybe there's a cost of a TMS in there, but you're talking very inexpensive to get started as a freight agent. So I hope that helps. If you got a follow-up, let me know. Mega Axel asks, how important is it to have the 6-month rule with new MC companies? Is it risky to specialize in new MCs? Well, of course, new MCs are the riskiest proposition that a new broker or that a broker can take because there is no history. So you don't know, number one, let's assume that they're not fraudulent, right? Let's assume that they're totally on the up and up, which the majority of new MCs are, right? You don't know if they have the skills to actually fulfill what you're asking them to fulfill. Just because they have a carrier MC doesn't mean they have experience as a carrier or a driver, right? They could be a brand new driver with a brand new MC and have moved very little, if any, freight. So that's the problem with having a brand new MC. So a 6 month, a lot of brokers do a 6 to 12 month rule where they say, listen, if I can see your history for the last 6 months, you've gotten some inspections, right? You've got a little bit of history there. Maybe you got some references from other companies. Usually a lot of brokers, especially more established brokers, have a 6 to maybe 12-month rule where they have to have their MC for that period of time, but that doesn't even guarantee it, right? So when it's like any new vendor relationship in any industry, right? You don't know until you know. So there is a certain amount of risk. If you're, say, for example, if you're someone who sells computers, right? and you have a new business that buys a bunch of your computers, right? You don't know if they're going to pay you, and vice versa. Let's say you're a business and you buy computers from a brand new computer company, right? That sells computers. You don't know if they're even going to be able to deliver them. So it's not just a freight logistics transportation thing. When you're vetting a new vendor, you have to take that very, very seriously. So someone who's brand new and doesn't have a history in business is going to be a higher risk than someone who's had a year or 2 or 5 or 10 years, right? So I hope that helps. All right, I'm scrolling. Okay, Kent, I just enrolled in your freight broker bootcamp. I'm 72 years old and I'm debating whether or not to pursue becoming a freight broker or freight agent. Well, I'm not sure what your question is. If you want to come back with a specific question, right? And I can try to answer it. Arthur asks, how do you compete with Uber freight rates when they offer below market rates to gain market share? The answer is so simple and so mind-blowing. I want you to lean in and I want you to listen. I don't. I don't. I don't try to compete with Uber. Okay? Because there are things that I can do that Uber can't. There are things that I have that clients prefer over Uber. I don't focus in on price. If the requirement is for me to be the cheapest, then I exit stage left. And I'll even tell a prospect on the first phone call, listen, I got to get this off my chest. I really appreciate, the opportunity, but if your expectation is for me to be the cheapest, I'm probably not your guy. But if you'd like to know why my clients are willing to pay me a little bit more, I'd be happy to share that. Right? So I don't focus in and try to win business on price. Right? I'm not looking to be the Uber or the Walmart of freight. Okay? That's not what I do. Matter of fact, we were never the cheapest. Matter of fact, my clients that I've worked extensively with over the years, they're not the cheapest. Right? The fastest way to go broke is to try to compete with the guys that are the cheapest, right? So there are brokers out there that are cheap, and there are brokers out there that are a little bit more expensive, and there are brokers out there that are super expensive. But yeah, they still have clients, they still have business, they still have profits. It really depends on where you want to be. If you're focused on trying to be the cheapest, you're going to have a tough road, because companies like Uber and other brokerages that are focused on purely on high volume, low margin, you're not going to be able to compete with them probably, unless the client is having an issue because that company is so cheap that they're using piss poor vendors, piss poor carriers, piss poor drivers. Because again, like anything else, you get what you pay for. When you pay a carrier X, right, and it's the bottom of the barrel, the cheapest rate, they're losing money, you get that quality of service. When you pay them a little bit more, you get that quality of service, and it's noticeable to the clients, right? So that's a little bit, I hope that helps. How do you get the right dispatcher email? Most likely from the load boards. If you have a dispatcher an independent dispatcher that's working for a carrier, typically they're going to be posting their trucks, and it'll be their email that will be what you'll use to communicate with them through the load boards. I'm just scrolling. Give me a minute here. Okay. The company I'm working with has made some drastic changes in hours and cut days. Okay. They remove them when looking for new logistics opportunities. What are some questions you would ask? Okay. Well, it's more than questions, right? I mean, there's a process for selling. The hardest part of selling is not asking questions. It's not qualifying the prospect. The hardest part of selling is getting their attention in the first 5 to 15 seconds. Because if you sound like everybody else, okay, and then they're going to treat you like everybody else. I'm not interested. We don't do business with brokers. We're happy with our current providers. Click, right? So the reality is you have to get their attention, and there's a way to do that. And the secret is to be different. There's a quote that I heard many, many years ago. It's different is better than better. Let me explain to you what that means. Different is better than better. Okay. So everybody in business tries to play the better game. Oh, we got better rates. We got better communications. We got better technology. We got better, team members, right? We've got a better website. We've got better, right? And it's impossible to be better than everything with everybody, if you know what I mean, right? So playing the better game is very difficult. Of course, you want to put the best product service out there that you can, but the reality is there's always going to be someone who maybe has a little better rates, a little better technology, a little better marketing, right? So the reality is you need to focus on being different. So different is easy. So for example, if you call up a prospect and you say, hey, you use some old school sales pitch, the classic freight broker sales pitch. Hey, we've got trucks in your area and I wonder if we might be able to move some of your freight. Total garbage, right? All you're doing is playing a numbers game and begging people for freight. They've heard it 1,000 times. So it's automatic. It's what it's already done is it's created this negative impression that you are just another phone jockey. So as soon as they hear that language, as soon as they hear that coming out of your mouth, it automatically creates a negative impression in their brain and they're looking to get off the phone. But if you sound different, if you have a different approach, if you have a compelling sales hook that's very relevant to your prospect, all of a sudden that's refreshing. It sounds different. It doesn't sound pitchy. It doesn't sound salesy, right? You're more likely to get their attention so you can actually continue that conversation. So I hope that helps a little bit. I know that kind of should have addressed a couple of the people who had questions. Maybe, hopefully it did. If not, hit me up with a follow-up. Hi, new broker, joined your course last month. Awesome. Perfect. Okay, Kent says, I live just north of Nogales, California. There are many produce distributors, brokers located there. I assume that introducing myself to them would be a viable way to help in my startup. Please advise. Okay. If you want to focus in on the produce market, then the 3 primary companies that you're going to go at, well, the 4 primary companies you can go after: growers, farmers that actually make it, distributors, produce brokers. Believe it or not, there are produce brokers, or retailers, right? If you have a bunch of distributors and produce brokers in and around your area, absolutely, that would probably be your target market. If you're focused in, that'd be the easiest target market for you to identify and start a conversation with you if that's your niche, right? If you're focused in on produce. So yeah, I like the train of thought. I like that concept. Yeah. All right, we're going to do a couple more questions, then we're going to probably wrap it up for today. Question. I have a small hotshot company. I know I have to get a second MC, but can I use my existing BOC and UCR and the DBA, the name? Okay. So you have a carrier authority, but you're looking to set up a broker authority. Is that what you're looking to do? So if you're looking to do that, you may want to consider talking to your insurance company before you set that up, because a lot of people that are carriers have their carrier MC and then want to set up their brokerage. The feedback that I've gotten over the years is that some of the insurance companies don't like that, and they'll raise your insurance on your carrier side. And so what they do is they set up another company, another entity, another LLC with a different address, with a similar name. So if you're ABC Trucking, now maybe you're ABC Trucking and Logistics, right? So there'll be a little bit of continuity between the two companies, but you may have to have different, you'll have to have different MCs, different locations, different business entities. So you may want to check on that. If it's not a problem with your insurance company, yeah, you can just use the same, you'll have to set up a different MC, but you'll have to have a slightly different, you'll have to have a slightly different company name. It can't be the exact same name. But if you could run it under the same DBA, I guess, which is your EIN, right? So yeah, hope that helps. I don't have experience in freight broker, but I got my broker license and wanted to know, how can I start my business? I joined your boot camp course and supply course from Georgia Tech to understand the industry. Good. All right. Awesome. I hope things are going well. Join in these lives. And as you have questions, I'll be happy to try to answer. And because you're a part of the Freight Broker Boot Camp and you took my course, you also have dedicated support through our email, which is support@freightbrokerbootcamp.com. That's where you'll get dedicated student and client support. So I hope that helps. But these lives are great. What is the best tracking app to track shipments? There are so many tracking apps now, TextLocate and MacroPoint and all these different ones. There are tons of them out there. I would tell you, try to, like any new vendor, try not to focus in on startups, because you're probably until they've been more established and maybe in business at least a couple of years. Or you can go with the guys that have been tried and true for a decade, guys like MacroPoint and so on and so forth. So I hope that helps. There are tons of them out there, right? I would just try to focus in on not necessarily the cheapest, but the ones who have a well-established reputation and customer base. Their technology is ironed out, and you're going to be able to get really good predictable service. Because remember that the accuracy of that tracking is a big factor that saves you an enormous amount of time and could mean the difference between between retaining or losing a client. So don't get cheap when it comes to freight tech like that. Yes, you can absolutely work as home as a freight broker, a licensed freight broker, or as a freight agent. Most brokers and most agents start at home. Most agents continue to work from home. And most brokers, as they grow, once they have to start hiring people, unless they can hire remote, they might get a small office at that point. Okay, Dennis, thank you for your response. To be more specific, my age is 72. I'm thinking that starting a freight agent and getting more experience before committing to freight brokerage requirement would likely be best. I agree, whether you're 72 or 22. If you don't have experience in the industry, right, and you want to dip your toe in and you want to get a little bit of experience before jumping into the brokerage side, before getting your licensed brokerage, I totally agree. Starting as a freight agent is the best gig in town, right? I told you already, I have clients of mine, friends of mine, that as an agent, okay, earn 300, 500, $1 million a year in commission in their pocket, Hip National Bank, right? As an agent. Now, not everybody does that. That's the top 1 or 2%. But the fact is, if they can do it, you can do it, right? So the opportunity is there, and you have very little risk, very little overhead, right? It really depends upon your ability to acquire and service your clients, but you don't have to worry about your authority. You don't have to worry about compliance. You don't have to worry about freight tech. You don't have to worry about billing and collections. You don't have to worry about your surety bond. You don't have to worry about any of that. As an agent, you just focus on getting and retaining your clients, and you get 50 to 70% of the profit. If you develop a customer database and you want to pivot over into your own freight broker 2 or 3 years in, absolutely, feel free, right? It'll probably be a pretty smooth transition for you. So I hope that helps. Wow, 30 years in heavy haul CDL. Congrats, that's amazing. That experience should translate incredibly well over into becoming a broker or an agent. So I'm really happy for you. I'm excited. Keep me posted. Okay, how do you prospect from LinkedIn to gain my customers? All right, so I'm going to give you, there's a lot of strategies for leveraging LinkedIn, but I'm going to give you an example of a strategy that you can do, and it costs you absolutely nothing. You don't need a paid account. You can have a free account. So let's say, for example, you're in the produce industry. We're just talking about produce, right? Fresh fruits and vegetables, perishable, needs to be transported, right? Reliably. So you get on LinkedIn, you start developing a network of people that are in the trucking and logistics industry, that are in the produce industry, right? And so you start building connections there. But more importantly, you identify someone in that niche, someone from the produce industry, not necessarily a freight broker, but maybe they're a produce broker. Maybe they're a distributor of produce. Maybe they're a grower. Maybe they're more of an influencer that talks about trends in the industry. You find somebody on LinkedIn that has an established network and posts content regularly, and their network and people on LinkedIn will engage with that content. So for example, maybe they'll like, or they'll share, or they'll comment. And you start engaging in that content, and you insert yourself into that conversation. And you're able to then qualify the people that are commenting on their posts by looking at their profiles, seeing if they're an example of a good ICP, of an ideal client profile. And then at that point, you can start developing rapport and a relationship with them, right? So, maybe you hit them up with a connection request saying, hey, listen, I saw that you were engaging with Joe's post about the produce trends. Figured it'd be great to connect. So that becomes a non-salesy way for you to connect with your ICP on LinkedIn. Now, here's the thing. You got to understand something about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is not Tinder. Okay? So we're not speed dating. This is not you going in, getting a connection request, and then coming out with your club and clubbing them over the head like a baby seal. Okay? That's not what we're doing. Okay? You have to slow things down. On social, you have to slow things down. So you can't just go for the kill. You've got to develop some rapport. You got to develop a little bit of relationship. And it takes a little bit of time. It's a little bit more of a slow boat to China. That's why I like LinkedIn in conjunction with the phone and email, because once you get a LinkedIn connection, it's more likely that you'll be able to actually call them and get them on the phone. If you get a LinkedIn connection, they're more likely to reply to your email, right? If you get a LinkedIn connection, they're more likely to set a meeting with you or have a conversation with you if you cold call them, face to face. So I hope that helps. That's just one strategy, but there are many strategies. But I hope that helps. That's a great place where you can get started without a big following, without publishing your own content, without any of that. So I hope that helps. What requirements do I need to become a freight agent as I don't have experience? The requirements you need as a freight agent is to be able to fog a mirror. No, I'm just kidding. You need to have a basic understanding of the industry, right? How loads are brokered, right? You need to have a basic understanding of whatever niche you're going to go into, whether that be the van or produce or steel or heavy haul or whatever it is, right? You have to have a little bit of an understanding of that. You're going to need to understand a little bit about the tools that you'll use, things like load boards and TMS and stuff like that. But other than that, you don't have a lot of requirements. You don't need a bond. You don't need to have your own MC number. You will work under a licensed freight broker as an independent contractor. You're your own business entity. You're a 1099 independent contractor. And then you will work with them in a partnership, and you'll basically get 50 to 70% of the profits on any loads that you originate from your clients. So I hope that helps. If you got a follow-up, let me know. Dennis, please provide guidance in sourcing out brokerage companies to affiliate with. You know, the best place for you to find brokerage companies that will hire a new agent is LinkedIn. You could also do things like Indeed or job ads, but typically those are going to be larger companies that are going to be looking for brokers who have an established book of business. You don't have that. So here's who you're going to be targeting. You're going to be targeting small to medium-sized freight brokerages. Small brokerages have maybe been in business a year or 2 or 3 or 5 years. They're still small. Maybe they're doing $1 million or $5 million or $10 million in sales. They're looking to grow, but they don't have the resources to hire a lot of inside people. You know, they don't want to spend $60,000 or $80,000 in salary and benefits and all that. So they'll hire you as an independent agent on straight commission, right? Getting 50 to 70% of what you kill, right? So that's your target market. Now, LinkedIn, again, is probably the best place to do that. There's a lot of companies out there that are always posting content, talking about agent programs and so on and so forth. I mean, you know, there are a ton of them out there. I don't have a list off the top of my head. But if you look on LinkedIn, you look on Indeed, you're going to see a bunch of companies. But again, if you're running into a challenge of, hey, they want me to have a book of business, focusing on the smaller companies, not a brand new startup who's only been in business 3 months, someone who's been in business at least a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And then your proposal, your value proposition is you will help them grow. Here's why you're confident. Here's your plan. And it will cost them absolutely zero unless you generate profit for them first. Okay. That's a pretty good value proposition. So I hope that helps. Okay. Hey, I'll be finishing my freight broker course in about a month, and I plan to be an agent. Should I apply to brokerages now, or should I wait until I finish the course? You know, that's really subjective. You know, I don't know your life experience. I don't know how sophisticated you are. I don't know any of that, right? So you really have to kind of go with your gut on that. Just know one thing. When you approach a brokerage, it's just like you approaching a shipper, meaning you're only going to have one chance to make a good first impression. Okay. So you want to make sure it's a good first impression, because it's very hard to dig yourself out of that hole. So, you know, mileage may vary, but be cautious when and jumping too early. Here you go. Arthur says he's always looking for qualified agents. I don't know what that means, but maybe Arthur can help. All right, guys, listen, here's what I'm going to say. If you need help with getting clients, with sales, right? With landing shippers, right? Getting your first 5 or 10 clients, paying clients, so you can propel yourself to 7 figures as a broker in the next 12 to 18 months. get on the wait list for my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. It's freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. Okay. If you get on that wait list, it's absolutely free. You'll get notified when I open enrollment for my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator, which is my coaching and mentoring program. That is not free. It's not cheap, but it's worth every penny exponentially, right? Again, get on the wait list if you're curious about that, if you need help. I'm really not looking for tire kickers. So if you're really serious and you're already a broker or you're already an agent, right? I'm not looking for people. If you're looking for startup help, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com. If you're looking for help specifically with sales, then go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. Okay. So I hope that helps you guys. You guys had some really good questions today. I'm excited that I'm back in the saddle here and now doing some lives again. Hopefully we're going to be able to continue these at least every week if you guys continue to bring good questions. So really appreciate you guys being here. Again, if you guys are looking for startup help, right, and you're just looking to get started and you're looking for some guidance on how to become a freight broker, how to become a freight agent, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com. Trained over 10,000 students, had that program for well over a decade now. And we offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money-back guarantee on that startup program. So appreciate you guys being here. Have an awesome day. Have an awesome week. And I'll see you next week on the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live.